Okay, we're ready to move on to part 2 of the walk cycle project. Part 1 has to be finished before you can move on, and that is 8 to 10 frames of one cycle of walking. So that would be your right leg moving forward, your left leg moving forward. And when I press Command Return, I see that an SWF or flash video has been created. The walk cycle is your character walking in one place, not actually moving anywhere yet. And if you have all this ready, you're ready to move on. One other thing to notice, in this particular example, the student has created each moving part on its own separate layer and very organized, labeled each layer. Some students have created each drawing, each of the 8 to 10 drawings on their own frame and have just one layer. Either way is fine as long as you have a complete walk cycle moving in place. Okay. Step 2 is to create an animated environment that uses your walk cycle at least 3 times. The animated environment has to have at least 5 other animations happening. In this case, you'll see the sun is animated, the flowers are animated, the bird is animated, the tree is animated, and there are clouds that are animated. And then in addition, you'll see 3 walk cycles. The student used the same walk cycle twice, however, edited that walk cycle so each one is different color, and then created a whole new walk cycle for the third character. You can use the same walk cycle for all 3, or you can alter it for each of the 3, or you can create new ones for each of the 3. Just consider the amount of time you have so that you can meet the deadline. Let's watch. Command Return.
Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Everything looks wonderful. It's what I feel.
Okay, so again, you see the sun, you see the flowers, you've got the bird, the tree, and the clouds all moving. The blonde character and the brunette character are the exact same, except for she altered their colors and changed hairstyles. And of course, we have sound effects and music that sets the tone. You will have to add sound effects and music as well. So let's get started. To do this, the first thing is you need to plan for an environment. So Command N or File New, click OK. Notice that it defaults to the standard 550 by 400 stage. You must double the width of your stage so you have room to create an environment where your character can walk through. All you need to do is come over here to Properties where it says Size. Default is 550, so we're going to duplicate it and it becomes 1100. Okay, so now you have a nice wide stage to move through. Okay, so layer 1. We do not have a background yet. And for demonstration purposes, I'm simply going to create a color background and leave it at that. Oh, that's too small. Let's go up to 80. Okay. So I'm just going to take a rectangle, no stroke because I don't want an outline on it, and I'm going to just pick a solid color for now, and I am going to fill the background with color. And that is just so it's not white the whole time. But it only exists on frame 1 right now. So I wanted to span the whole animation. So I'm just going to go to frame 60. And I'm going to insert a regular frame. Not a keyframe, just a regular frame. So what happens is the keyframe here with the art and all these frames here are simply holding that image of the keyframe. That's it. Nothing's changing. And of course, let's be organized and label. Now, we need a new layer. The next layer, we're going to want to add the walk cycle. So to get your walk cycle in here, you want to import that SWF or SWIF movie file. You don't want the FLA work file, you want the SWIF. So we go to File, Import. You do not want to import to Stage, you want to import to the library so that you can use it as many times as you want without increasing the size of your file. So import to library. We're going to go in and find, and it's Walk Cycle 1, it's the SWF file. Click Open, and notice that these files all locate into your library now. These individual symbol files, they are the parts of your walk cycle, and this is the actual animation, the SWF. Some of you may not see these symbol files appear. If you've created, let's just jump back to the walk cycle. If you've created all the different elements and moving parts of your walk cycle separate, as this student did, you're going to see separate show up in your library. Don't worry, no big deal. If you created your walk cycle all on one layer, you're just going to get your SWIF. Doesn't matter, you're not going to do anything with those symbol files. You only work with the SWIF. And when I click on it to select it, I see a little play button, so I can actually see that it is working. So to use it, we have its own layer. Every time you add something that moves, make sure it's on its own layer. So we're calling this Walk 1. And I'm just dragging that SWIF out of the library and putting it on the stage. Well, really, I'm going to start it partially off the stage because I want it entering the scene. But before you can actually have your character enter the scene, you have to create the scene so you know where to move this. But for demonstration purposes, I want you to know how to resize. So I'm using Transform. I can hold Shift and click and it resizes in proportion. Or I can just freeform, click and drag to resize. Either way is fine. Okay. Now, also what you should see is when I take the artwork from the library, it is a symbol. You see the blue box around here and the target in the middle? That tells you this is a symbol. To animate a symbol, you have to use a motion tween. So in the span of frames where we have your walk cycle occurring, you must create a motion tween. And you know it's motion if it turns blue in your timeline. Frame 1 is my first position of the walk cycle. And let's say frame 60, I want it to have reached the other side. And notice this path that came out, that means that it has worked. And I could click play up top. But as the walk cycle moves across, you're not seeing the actual walking or animation inside that character. In order to see the walking inside a symbol, you must press Command Return. And now you see it as it walks across. And it's going a little bit fast. So let's adjust that. Oops. Okay. To adjust, you could alter the frames per second. So 24 frames per second might be too fast for this walk cycle. Maybe we should change it to 12. So you can't do it right here. It's grayed out. So if you click on your stage, notice here in Properties, oops, click. Oh, I'm not clicking on the stage because that background's in the way. So I'm just going to turn the background off for a minute. I'm clicking directly on the stage, and when I did that, it reveals in Properties my frames per second. I'm simply going to change it to 12, press Return, and now let's see how it adjusts the speed. All right, so it's less frames moving per second, which slowed that walk cycle down. That's nicely slowed down, but let's say we want it even slower. Do not go below 12 because it becomes choppy. But what you could do is click and drag on that last frame, and what happens is it will extend the amount of time, but notice the background was not extended. Watch what happens. Command Return. As it's walking, it's slowed down a lot. That's a good speed for this walk cycle. But look at that. All of a sudden, the background turns white. And that is happening right here in the timeline because the background is not holding all the way. So let's turn that background back on and unlock it. And I'm simply going to go to the last space And I'm going to insert a frame, so I'm holding the background the whole time again. And as the cycle walks across, it's lovely, stays blue, nice and smooth. Let's close the movie file. That is how you add your walk cycle. Now, let's put another walk cycle in. Let's call this one Walk 2. Remember, label your layers, keep it organized, and you can always lock layers to protect them. So I am on Walk 2. And while I'm at the first frame where the keyframe is, let's drag this walk cycle out and let's have it move towards the right now. Of course, he's facing towards the left. So if I select my transform tool, it lets me simply drag and flip him around. And I'll shrink him a little, but maybe not as much. Actually, maybe I'll make him really tiny. Sure, and he's going to go climb a mountain. So we have frame 1. We have a span of frames selected, or created, I should say, and we're going to right-click, create a motion tween. And let's put the playhead at the end. And, oops, I didn't mean to do that. If you do that, you can simply double-click on that layer in the timeline and it closes it again. And make sure you have your frame selected, and let's drag this. Oops, let's take this to the last position, and I'm having him climb a mountain. So I have my path going uphill. Let's watch. Okay, the little guy, he's moving off in the distance, and how funny that is. Since I put the layer on top, he's passing in front, which makes no sense because he's smaller, he's further away, he's climbing a mountain. So I'm going to just reorder and put walk cycle 2 under walk cycle 1. So now he's passing behind. But I think I want more detail than just a straight line going uphill. So I'm going to move the playhead back, and I am going to click and drag him up, and notice how it altered the path. And I'm going to do another increment. Let's make him go down the hill now, and maybe over here we have him go way up, like that. Let's see what happens now. I've customized his path. He's not simply walking in a straight line, more interesting, more possibilities for backgrounds that I could create. And then one last possibility to alter the walking path. If you use your selection tool and hover over the path, you see a arced line. Click and drag. It allows you to arc the path. So perhaps I dip it down there, and maybe I arch it up there, but of course he's going to be off stage, so maybe I bring him back down. I don't know, I might be, let's just see what happens. Maybe I made it crazy. Up, down, up, and over, and off stage. Okay, and of course you need to have a third version of walk cycle as well. Again, you can use all the same characters, or you can alter the characters, which I'll demonstrate in a separate video.